Hello, welcome to Fogset. My name is Michael Meehan, and today we have a very special guest, Professor Dr. Sebastian Feldspar of the Experimental Archaeology Department at Cairo University. Welcome, Dr. Professor.
Cool, great to be here, dude.
Do you prefer Dr. Professor or Professor Doctor?
Who cares? Whatever's cool.
Now, Dr. Professor Feldspar, your book on experimental archaeology, Dig It Baby, is zooming up the bestseller lists and is a chart topper, as they say. Explain what exactly is experimental archaeology?
So let's say I wanted to test whatever, I would make whatever and see how it would most likely be used. For example, the atlatl. You would make the atlatl and test it out, and however it would be most likely to be used, you would use it in that manner.
I see. Now, what exactly is an atlatl for those of us who don't know?
It's pretty much the non-stereotyped type of spear. When you think of a spear, a throwing spear, you think of throwing a spear, although that was only used for a couple hundred years. Now they use a stick that throws a stick, kind of like, those doggy thingies that you throw balls with. And then you put the stick in a little divot in the other stick, and you just fling a stick.
Dr. Professor Feldspar, with global warming and the ice melting, do you see the discovery of more finds, dinosaurs, flying saucers, my car keys that I lost?
But it's not within my area of expertise.
I got you. So most of it's experimental archaeology, recreating some of the tools from lost civilizations?
Yes, very much so.
What would be some of the other tools or devices that you would recreate?
The northern longbow, and also the Win-2 point that usually was created by Ishi, now known more as the Ishi point.
Dr. Professor, for those of us who are a bit of numbskulls in archaeology, can you explain exactly what an Ishi point is?
It's your average typical arrowhead, but it's more narrow and it has steep edges that are usually around 1 millimeter or half a millimeter thick. And then the notches, you usually see it in the signs that say National Park, the little divots essentially that go into an arrowhead. They curve upward like this. And it's one of the hardest types of flint knapping on Earth because you have to start off like this, and then, in my opinion, my preferred way to create the Ishi point is start off by using an antler to take off little tiny pieces of the stone near the base, and then slowly curve upward. But then once you get to the point where it's swooping up, you have to start using this thing called indirect percussion. There's direct percussion where you get an antler billet or a piece of copper or a rock even, and you hit the edge of it using the conchoidal fracture. But if you want to get in a narrow space like you do when creating the notches on the Ishi point, you have to use this thing called indirect percussion, where you grab an antler and something heavy like another antler, and one antler needs to be smaller than the other, and then you put your antler wherever you want to drive off a flake. It's usually a pretty small area, and then you hit it with the other antler to create a conchoidal fracture and usually get a more detailed flake.
And to recreate these tools, what sort of material do you use?
If I were to name every different thing, I would go on for hours. But the main types, I won't describe the types of flint, but it's anything with a high silica content. Like, for example, obsidian is one of the best things to make it out of. It's my preferred type. Some people would disagree because a lot of people like flint because it's tougher and it doesn't break off as easily. But I prefer obsidian just because it's a lot easier to pressure flake. Remember, this is just my opinion. And also, you can use flint, basalt, you can use, and then It depends what time period this is used in. So if it's this, all I'm talking about is from the Paleolithic time period to Neolithic time period, while later on it's in the Mesolithic time period, they more often used slate and other materials to grind rocks on other rocks that are easy to grind other rocks on, to be able to make the arrowheads, which in my opinion wasn't the best idea, but I mean they conquered the other tribes, so pretty much they were able to choose what happens next. And because of that, what happened is a Mesolithic axe is about half or even less than half as good as a steel axe, while if you flint knap it with Paleolithic to Neolithic time periods technology, a arrowhead, or if you were to replicate a needle made of steel out of obsidian, it would be 500 to 1,500 times sharper than the steel needle, which is why in certain types of surgery they actually use obsidian blades instead of metal blades to perform the surgery. And that's only in certain places and certain surgeries, like eye surgery, for example. It's almost impossible to, fix an eye with a needle, essentially, that's made of metal, while obsidian, because it has such a sharper blade, it's so much easier to make the eye, for it to penetrate through the eye.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Professor Sebastian Feldspar, and good luck with your book, Dig It Baby, about experimental archaeology. And that is available in bookstores and museums, as well as a 900-part dance video on TikTok. Thanks so much for joining us on Fogset.
Great to be here.